This is Pantdora, my 1,000-gallon cloud rainforest vivarium, with its own automated climate, winds, and photoperiod, home to a vast array of tropical plants, fungi, and animals aplenty, from herbivores to predators, to scavengers, ants to reptiles. They all live here, interconnected, forming an ecosystem within glass. It took me months of planning, 6 days to build, but a lifetime to dream about. It's indeed the greatest biological project and undertaking of my life. But Pantdora has had 2 months to mature and has definitely come a long way in its evolution since it was first created. So, join me on an updated grand tour of these lush lands as we explore Pandora's ever-changing and ever-evolving bioscape. You will love all the creatures that live in the rainforest now, as well as the incredible surprise event that I happened to stumble upon by pure fluke, which I'll show you at the end of this video. We also welcome our newest members to join our rainforest, a new colony of Carpenter Ants that I've been eager to add to these lands, as well as some other new arrivals that will have many of you shouting at your screen. Welcome to part 12 of my Ecosystem Vivarium Series, a full update and epic tour of my giant rainforest vivarium to see what Mother Nature has been up to these past 2 months within our majestic tropical kingdom within glass, here on the AntsCanada Ant Channel. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon. Welcome to the AC fam. Enjoy. Shh. Look, members of the Dark Horde, including a queen, were gathered within a pocket in the Hallelujah tree stump. These were among the remaining camps of invasive black crazy ants within the rainforest, and getting rid of them was imperative, or at least their numbers had to be controlled. So I had a plan. I watched as Dark Horde guards stood ready to fight around the last remaining members of their once great empire. It looked like the ants were asleep. It was my chance. Suddenly, from the skies, an alien black hole vortex came and sucked them out from their place, instantly transporting them to another dimension. I managed to spot several lone queens wandering around in search of their main colony, which of course were now gone, and I abducted them as well. It actually hurt me to have to intervene and do this, because I do love all ants, and it wasn't the Dark Horde's fault they were invasive, but it needed to be done if Pantdora was to thrive the way it was intended to. Because, well, let me show you how quickly the rainforest transformed and recuperated in just a period of 1 week after the once dominating invasive black crazy ants were largely removed from the ecosystem. The marauder ants were out celebrating and foraging. It's been a while since I'd seen these ants gathered above ground like this during the day. It seems the marauders were a lot freer now that we had eliminated their main competitor. Guys, by the way, I've been meaning to give this colony a name. What should we name them, guys? Let me know in the comments. Alongside the marauders were plenty of baby crickets who frolicked the forest floor, rather carefree. It was amazing to see so many crickets happily scuttling about in search of food. Both the marauders and the crickets were loving this Dark Horde-free existence. I suddenly caught sight of my greatest fear in the lands. A worm. But this was not just any worm. In case you haven't been following the series, these worms are carnivorous. My worst nightmare, as I do have a worm phobia. And worms that eat meat? My ultimate nightmare. These are land planaria, and I watched as it made its way towards the marauders. Would it eat the ants? I observed the scene wide-eyed and heart beating in my ears. Nope. Guess the worm didn't find these ants tasty, nor did the marauders find the worm to be a threat. These crickets better watch out though. This is Jiminy, a young cricket who's been through a lot in his not very long life, but he's been surviving and has grown much since we last saw him. I was happy to see our crickets and marauders were doing well, but there was something I really needed to do. A a swarm of ants began trailing from their nest as a supermajor emerged to join in on the exciting endeavor. These were marauder ants, but not the colony in Pantdora, but rather my personal colony, the Leviathans. It was feeding time, and the ants were beginning to arrive in droves from the mouth of the sea dragon that forms the exit of their nest. But AC family, I wanted to show you this. You see that swarm? This is a colony that has been allowed to feed and grow over the course of 1 year, devoid of competitors or population regulating factors. Keeping ants this way is great, but in nature, an ant colony like this would have to contend with predators, natural events, and competing ant species that would help curb population and even possibly make them stronger. And so, it was time to add another player into Pantdora to ensure more competition among the ants in the lands so there would be greater balance and no one species dominating. This was a new orange Carpenter Ant colony that I've been waiting to introduce into the territories since the very beginning, but couldn't because of the Dark Horde's problematic dominion over Pantdora. Welcome to Pantdora, my beloved Carpenter Ants. I placed their test tubes into 2 holes within the Hallelujah tree stump, within which I knew the ants would love nesting. Interestingly, I spotted black crazy ants emerging from the hole, and one even carrying brood as it abandoned ship. I didn't mind that there were a few Dark Horde members in there, because I knew the Carpenters would be able to deal with them. The Carpenter Ants were big enough to displace them and spray a powerful amount of formic acid if they needed to. The ants began to move their brood around towards the darker side of the test tube. The test tube at the top was instantly empty. I couldn't wait for this Carpenter Ant colony to move in and take up their place within the ecosystem as the newest ant species in town. But as cool as these newcomers were, they weren't the only ones scheduled for a grand homecoming. Oh, Lady Deathstrike. I approached the holding container of our huntsman goddess, who was still guarding her fattened coin-shaped egg sac, but she had a surprise to show me. Why, what have we here? Spiderlings had finally emerged after weeks of incubation. And my, did they look stunning! There's no mistaking, these spiders were Kiro's spawn, as they looked exactly like their father. I could see a tear in the egg sac, and couldn't wait for the full horde to arrive. Lady Deathstrike, your time is near. Just a little while longer, until you fulfill your ultimate destiny. In the Driftwood, I spotted our golden dragon, our resident sunskink. He's grown quite a bit since we first moved him in here, and has been enjoying being the apex predator of the lands. He's grown more and more comfortable with me filming him, and this was the closest he's ever let me get to him. I'm still trying to look for a female for him, so he could start his little sunskink family. My eye suddenly caught sight of something swaying above. It was our Green Reaper, Pandora's praying mantis. I smiled as I watched her swaying to a beat, playing only in her head, as she made her way across the top glass. She too has been eating lots, and as she made her way towards the canopy, I noticed something really neat. See her back? It looks like she'll be growing some wings soon, perhaps at her next shed. I couldn't wait to see her in her final form. Speaking of which, I did have another mantis that I was hoping would be a male, but sadly, a lot of you mantis experts confirmed that it was also a female. Guess I'll be letting it go, and keep my eye open for a mantis dude for our Green Reaper. Now speaking of new wings, check out this beauty. See it? There on the lemon lime philodendron plant. This was our new damselfly, and I just loved its color. We saw it freshly emerge from Pandora's waters in the last episode, and to be honest, I thought it had died because for a whole week I hadn't seen it. But nope, it was alive and well, and I'm sure was enjoying preying on the various flying insects, like forest flies and such, living in the rainforest. I couldn't get over its stunning colors of black, yellow, green, and orange at the tail, I never in a million years ever imagined one could keep a damselfly, but with a space as large as Pandora's, it was certainly possible, and it had a lot of room to fly and hunt. While some creatures were actively moving about hunting, others were staying in place and trapping. Our newest carnivorous pitcher plants were still doing their thing, attracting black crazy ants and crickets to their pitcher traps. Having caught so many insects to digest and acquire nourishment from, new pitchers were now rapidly growing and on the way. And hey, look there! That is one of the friendly ants we've been calling dwarf ants, which is actually a species of Tetramorium. I say friendly because it seems they have no enemies, and all ants seem to pay them no mind. I guess they also were attracted to the pitchers. Against the glass, I spotted Stanley, our resident bush cricket, who I initially thought was a female, calling her Lady Katie, but later discovered was a male, due to hearing it singing one night. I marveled watching Stanley breathe. It was amazing seeing how much his wings resembled a dead leaf, and his legs like skinny twigs or leaf stems. What a beautiful creature. Nearby, a close relative of his was a green grasshopper. There were 3 of these grasshoppers in Pantdora now, which was great because they helped control the growth of the asparagus ferns, their favorite food. Also in these lands were these babies, which I initially thought were the offspring of the green grasshoppers, but that I later realized were actually slant-faced grasshoppers. We used to have a slant-faced grasshopper in Pantdora, but it mysteriously disappeared a month or so ago. So I had assumed it died or was eaten, but I guess not without laying some eggs first, which is awesome. We'll soon have many slant-faced grasshoppers in Pantdora as well. A movement took my gaze up to the canopy, where I spotted Rocksteady, our resident Rhino Beetle, climbing masterfully along the vines. What a majestic beast! I watched as he climbed into the bush, turned around, and headed back across the vine. My guess was he was searching for a female to mate with. And indeed, I was also searching for one for him to wed. I'd love to have more rhino beetles frolicking Pantdora. Speaking of the vines, I was happy to see them continuing to burst in foliage. Have a look. New leaves and tendrils were reaching up and beyond, grasping onto anything its tendrils could touch, to pull itself up. I always found the plant act of vining intriguing. It always made me wonder how plants perceive the world around them. They didn't have eyes, but it seemed like plants had the ability to somehow sense what their immediate environment is like. Take this asparagus fern, for example. It somehow knew there was a clump of Spanish moss it could lean towards and start to climb through. Its neighbor was eaten by Stanley the night before, so it almost seemed as though this time it was wanting to hide in the Spanish moss as it sent its stalk up into the canopy. Its aim was to eventually give rise to a huge fern that would hang from the vines. But all of this made me wonder about just how quote-unquote intelligent plants were. Recent studies have shown that plants can communicate with each other by way of electrical signals and can even give neighboring plants a heads up about herbivores and plant damage. Whatever the case, both the vines and the asparagus ferns were growing rapidly, and I could almost see evidence of this decision-making. Check out this part of the vine later in the day. See how it seems to have decided to grow and lean over? How did it know to grow that way? Check out this asparagus fern near the sleeping tree frog. Later that day, the stalk had grown to follow the vine, almost as if it were ducking below it to evade Stanley come nighttime. Anyway, it was great to see the asparagus ferns thriving, as a lot of animals depended on it. Check out these mealybugs taking advantage of the soft skin of this new bud from the stalk Stanley chewed up. And this isopod. Another neat surprise growing from the wood, I spotted a cool mushroom. Awesome! I was waiting for the day our driftwood would produce mushrooms. This one was the biggest one yet, and I was happy to see some fungi representation in these lands. Anyone know what species it is? Moving on to our blackwater pond, new fish filled the waters. Baby guppies were now growing up in the waters, feeding well. Have a look. Pretty soon the pond will be filled with colorful guppies. There were still plenty of crabs picking at things along the pond floor, as well as a few shrimp. However, I could not see any nerite snails, which I believe were eaten by the crabs. Speaking of new babies, I caught sight of one of our resident house geckos, awake early to begin hunting for insects. I love the pattern of this gecko. What a stunning lizard. Now I suspect that the geckos have been reproducing, as I've been spotting tiny gecko droppings all over the rainforest, which, if so, means the geckos have been laying their eggs somewhere away from my view. I'll be sure to let you know if I spot some gecko babies. A movement at the stump caught my eye. A carpenter ant worker was moving erratically, and I suddenly discovered why. They were moving the queen. Whoa! I watched as workers guided the queen along a path across the outside of the tree stump. I guess they didn't want to move into the hole I thought they would. I watched in amazement as the ants guided their queen like vigilant security guards along the outside of the stump. Where were they going? I watched to see. At several points, I held my breath as I watched the ants crawl upside down and vertically. I was nervous because one slip and the queen would have fallen, and who knows how difficult it would be to retrieve her, as it was a long fall to the bottom. But the ants masterfully scaled across the stump wall. They eventually reached their final destination, a darkened area on the stump where I couldn't really see. The ants proceeded to carry their brood to this location as well. I was surprised to see ants taking another route around the back of the stump. Here's one carrying a cocoon, and another carrying a fellow young worker. I was happy the ants had found their desired spot to nest. I discovered one ant left behind. It had crawled into this test tube and was fast asleep. It was time to wake it up, which I did, and it instantly disappeared into the stump to join the rest of its colony soon. With these new carpenter ants now residing in the stump, I knew they would apply some pressure versus the dark horde. Night fell in Pantdora, and the sight of how the rainforest transforms at night always takes my breath away. Have a look. The resident tree frogs were awake and beginning their nightly hunt as usual. Here was Kermit, who loves this pose. He makes me smile every time I see him in this position. Miss Piggy was relaxing on a plant nearby. All the tree frogs were nice and fat, and I spotted some frog poop nearby. From the looks of things, they'd been eating crickets. I spotted our mantis sleeping up high in the canopy, and then spotted another house gecko hunting above. I highly suspect this gecko might be a different species from the other one we spotted earlier. Because of its bumpy skin and spiny-looking tail, my guess is this could be a Brooks house gecko. Not sure, but they were very prolific canopy hunters. Trailing along the asparagus fern, I spotted some acrobat ants. Up higher in the asparagus ferns was Stanley, contemplating which plant or vine he would murder next. But AC family, are you ready for this? Brace yourselves for the coolest sight. For what truly shocked me was the event I'd be witnessing in the wee hours of the morning. It was 4 a.m., before sunrise, when something in the plants caught me by surprise. I spotted something peculiar hanging from the leaves, and as soon as I realized what it was, my heart jumped into my throat. Oh man! The Green Reaper was molting! She hung in praying position as she separated from the remaining parts of her old skin. Check her out! The sight was truly something to behold. I couldn't get over the little folded buds that looked like they were going to become her new wings. I watched in awe as she continued to enter the world in her new skin. After an hour of just hanging there, she finally separated, and I couldn't believe my eyes as her wing vessels began to gradually fill with blood, unfurling her wings. What a miraculous process! Our Green Reaper would welcome a new day in a new body with a new pair of wings. I couldn't believe we had caught her undergoing the molting process at just the right time. When the sun was up, this was our Green Reaper's final form. She was huge, and those new wings were so cool. She would now be ready to mate, and now all I needed to do was find her a suitable male. So, as you can see, watching Pantdora, our cloud rainforest vivarium, mature over the past 2 months has been a never-ending adventure of discovery, to say the least. Indeed, there have been ups and downs, twists and turns, surprises, and experiences of some of the most priceless moments, and it all has been a constant eye-opener at just how beautiful and miraculous life actually is. Pandora's stunning ecosystem was only 1,000 gallons of rainforest life, a tiny minuscule speck of the immense complexity and splendor that exists within an entire planet of life. If there's one thing that this project has shown me, it's that Earth is something inexplicably awesome, beyond anything that we humans can imagine, and that our obligation as Earth's custodians is to ensure that inexplicable awesomeness continues to thrive through careful conservation, vigilance, and love for all the life with which we share the planet. It has been my greatest honor to watch our rainforest ecosystem evolve and mature with all of you, and I vow to continue to capture its ongoing evolution and uncover all of its incredible biological stories as they unfold and take flight. And with this recent controlling of the invasive ants in the rainforest, I knew in my heart that Pantdora would now enter a new era of fruition, and I was excited to see where this epic rainforest journey would take us. By the way, in case any of you were wondering, I still haven't seen any sign of the fire ants, seen in part 5, which probably means they likely all died out and didn't have a queen. And I still haven't seen any signs of giant trapjaw ants either, hoping one day we do. I noticed that the asparagus fern stalk had decided to leap high above the vine now and arch over it, where it would soon begin spreading its leaves, with many new stalks on the way. A generation of crickets, whom all the predators of the rainforest hunted, had officially reached their teenage years. The marauders, once suppressed, danced joyously upon the mossy hills, and seeing snippets of all of these optimistic micro-scenes like this, happening all over the lands, reminded me that in Pantdora, against all odds, once again, life found a way. Goddess Lady Deathstrike. The hour has arrived. Your spawn is ready to emerge into a brave new world. The era of Arachnida has finally come. Welcome, my 400 huntsmen of the apocalypse, to your new kingdom of Pantdora. Run free. Vote in my community tab to affect this story. Hope you can subscribe to the channel as we upload every Saturday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video to help us keep making more. It's Ant Love forever.